It was a time when seas of plastic swallowed metal miniatures. A time of the return of narrative gaming. An age undreamed of. A golden age of wargames. I will be the chronicler of this saga. Let me tell you of the days of high adventure. Hello, adventurers. Welcome to the 7th episode of the Days of High Adventure podcast. This is a special one. We are preempting the Kill Team episode, which is done and in the can. I'll release that on Thanksgiving. To talk about some news from Games Workshop today. Just today they announced that Warhammer Old Worlds will be coming out in a couple of years, which is a new version of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. It will be what the Horus Heresy is to Warhammer 40,000 for AOS. So a completely different system covering the old world. That world that we all loved. The world that was, as AOS calls it. Filled with dwarves and elves, the Empire, Bretonnians, Tomb Kings. All that great stuff. So they announced it today. This is the hot take. This is the immediate reaction as soon as I could make it. And Chris is joining me, so let's get into this. A little forewarning here. Skype was a little weird today, so I had to re-record some of my parts of the podcast, so the sound is a little bit different. So you will notice the tone of my voice change here and there, and that's where I had to re-record things. I didn't want you guys to have this really odd popping and cracking sounds. So now let's get on to the episode, and away we go. Chris is joining me again because he's full of opinions. I'm full of opinions. I figured it would be a good conversation. So this time around, we're going to discuss the hot news. Games Workshop is bringing back Warhammer Fantasy Battle, apparently in the form of Warhammer Old World. However, they've announced this, and it's probably going to be 3 years before we even see it.
Right.
So what are your initial thoughts there, Chris?
Well, I'm one of the people that missed Warhammer when it went away, and I had a lot of negative things, not negative things to say about AOS, Age of Sigmar. I had a lot of concerns.
Okay.
And when it came out, it was a fun enough game, but really what it had done was spelled the end of a game that I really wanted to play. So there's a part of me that is happy. But the part of me that wants to talk tonight on the show is the part that wants to say, I told you so, Games Workshop, you are liars.
Fair enough. Yeah, I had 30 years into Warhammer. While I wasn't enjoying it as much at the very end of the game, 8th edition just wasn't. It felt bloated. I wasn't enjoying it as much.
Mm-hmm.
But I had the better part of my life playing Warhammer Fantasy. I mean, I played this game since the first edition.
Right.
It was something that was part of me.
Mm-hmm. Right. I spent a large portion of the 90s playing this game. I'm not actually a Warhammer 40k 2nd edition player. I'm really a 4th and 5th and 6th edition fantasy player. And it comprised a large portion of my life. And from a few episodes back, it's how I came into miniatures gaming altogether.
Right, totally. And the rumor is this is going to be a separate system to AOS, like the Horus Heresy is a different system to 40k. Mm-hmm. So it will be another core specialist game system. Right. Another way to play fantasy games in their universe.
Right.
So, yeah, what an odd announcement, and so early.
Right.
So early.
And I have something to say about that earliness.
Okay.
3 years ago, when AOS was going to come out, for 2 years previous to that, there had been the rumor mills going on like Fate 212 and Spiky Bits and all those people.
Yeah, Warseer. Yeah.
They have this rumor mill, and there's this one rumor supplier named Hastings, I believe, is what I remember.
Yeah.
And for at least a year, if not more, before AOS was ever announced, this person was dropping hints that this thing is going to come. There's going to be this bubbled reality. The old world will be destroyed, and then the round bases, and all of these rumors came to pass. Now, that person, I don't think that's just a random leak. First of all, I don't think there's just some random dude Joe, in Nottingham that's leaking that. I think it's being leaked by someone very deliberately to spark interest and gauge early interest in games. And my belief is that it's Jervis Johnson. I think that he's the leak, and I think it's sanctioned, or maybe if it's not, but I think that he says, hey, here's this thing that's coming out. What do you guys think? And people are saying yes or no, or, ooh, that sounds interesting. He gauges a little bit of, reaction, but that's literally a year and a half, 2 years before AOS ever hits the shelves. And in that time, before AOS ever came out, he also said, Games Workshop will have a fallback in case AOS isn't working, and we'll reboot the old world. We're literally talking 4.5 years ago, that rumor was there. So to say that it'll take 3 years from now, I'm not saying it won't. I'm just saying what's going on, because this has always been a contingency. The Games Workshop was going to be able to bring themselves back out of AOS.
Right. I don't know. I can't figure out why they're doing it, now, after they nuked it so hard.
Mm-hmm.
They nuked it hard. When the game went away and we got, you remember, I was a giant AOS fanboy when it first came out.
Right.
Because I was so burnt on Warhammer Fantasy. I thought, okay, let's give this a try. It's the game, a reboot of the game. All the lists were free. The rules were free. Everything was covered.
Right.
So, I was stoked. So I went through and I started rebasing my dwarves, and I was having fun. But, now here we are 4 years in, and all those factions that came from the old world are devastated. Most of them are not in the game, not in a real way anymore.
Correct. Yeah. And that leads me to my biggest gripe of the whole thing. And this is a gripe before I even heard this news. It was the promise that your old miniatures would always be useful. You could always use them. Don't worry about the bases. Now as we're looking back on it with hindsight, we're seeing the whole bases don't matter. Measure from the model, right? Because they didn't want people to rage quit like Mr. Dark Elf Army, who set his crap on fire on YouTube.
That goes too much, man.
Right? That's so iconic. I think they've got a picture of that video up on the Warhammer community site. It's iconic. They're making fun of it.
Right.
That's how knee-jerk people reacted. The thing is, they didn't keep that promise. As time went by, they took stuff out. Then they nuked freaking 2 whole armies, right? They took them completely out.
The Bretonnians of the Tomb Kings.
Right. And they took away your armies.
2 iconic armies. 2 armies that were... Yeah.
Yeah.
They were Warhammer.
They basically... A promise was made, and that wasn't kept. And, Games Workshop said, whatever. The idea maybe being that, it's AOS now. And we have a good friend, Jody, who loves AOS, wasn't really into Warhammer, I don't believe.
Right.
And here's the deal. Now this news drops. How do you think these AOS players feel now? Are they going to be told by Games Workshop, oh, your stuff's still legitimate. Yeah, we're going to have Stormcast in Warhammer the Old World. We're going to have stats for them and everything. Guys, don't buy stock in that.
I don't think that's going to happen at all. I really do think they're going to separate this just like they do 30K and 40K.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be separate time periods, separate, ways of doing it.
Right.
I don't think we're going to see flying sharks, thank God, in the Warhammer Old World.
Yeah, I tried to say enough nice things about the flying sharks when they first came out, and they are gorgeous models, but
they're neat models.
They're dumb.
That's the point where Age of Sigmar jumped the shark for me. Pardon the expression.
Yeah, exactly. Pun intended.
it became harder and harder for me to be on board with this alien new setting because nothing was making sense to me.
Correct.
I mean, I get it. I get it. They're trying to be different. Things they can copyright. That's great. But hell, dude, we now have skeletons that are wearing bones fashioned in armor.
Right. So one of the things that we had talked about, I think last time I came up, was, when you have the old world, why it was so appealing was because everything was a cultural, an allegory that you could get behind. You have these lizard men, right? And you put them in front of a temple covered in jungle, and you give them some feathers, and you say, okay, these guys are like Mayans or Aztecs. And you go, oh, okay. And then they say, can you guess, what their magic is? And you're like, well, I don't know, like astrology? Of course you can guess what their magic is.
Right.
It makes sense to you because you're familiar with it. You're familiar with the Holy Roman Empire, and you're familiar with Tolkien elves and Tolkien dwarves, and you're familiar with Norska and the Norse. Everything's familiar, and you can immediately associate all these things, infer all this stuff. And then this AOS comes out, and you're trying your hardest to not be the jerk who's saying negative things about a new game.
Right. No. Yeah, I agree. They threw all the tropes out the window.
Right.
Or they have slowly but surely thrown the tropes out the window.
Right.
It's not recognizable anymore. Don't get me wrong. I'm not hating on AOS. I like the system as, I can play old world games in AOS.
Right.
But as it goes forward, a lot of these new factions just aren't doing it for me.
No, not at all. And all of the new factions, every single new faction that comes out.
The models are gorgeous.
Right.
The models are gorgeous, but it's just not the fantasy I want to play.
Right. Yeah. You're talking to the guy who painted an entire army of steampunk Dwarden and then sold it before I was done painting it. Right.
Right.
They're really cool. And then I realized I'm never going to play these. And these armies are very small, for AOS. They're very this is the trick with this army. This is how you play this very small army. It's not the grand armies. I mean, for goodness sake, they took the undead and they turned it into a whole ghoul army. I mean, they have whole armies made out of certain parts of the undead, where I was playing a Strigoi undead army in the 90s that had all of that stuff in it.
Right.
So very small, compact, and that's not necessarily how I want to play. And that's an issue I think AOS has.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't want to slag off on AOS. I just, I can't wait to just get back to calling things what they are. A dwarf, an elf, an elf.
Okay, right. Are they, though? Are you going to have AOS terms? They say, no, they're Dwarden, man. They're elf.
No, I don't think so. I think this is going to be classic old world. I hope so. I have enough faith in Games Workshop to say this. I really do think they're going to execute this like they did the Horse Heresy.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a completely different setting. They're not meant to cross.
Right.
Some of the models will cross factions. Because I can imagine when they bring out new Empire models.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they bring out new Empire models when the Warhammer Old World drops. I guarantee you they're going to come with round and square bases so you can use them in AOS.
Okay, sure.
But that's not going to happen with new Stormcasts. I don't think Stormcasts are going to cross over.
I'm going to bring in the storm clouds here, and I'm going to say they're going to put Stormcast on the table of the old world. And I don't agree with that choice, but I think it's going to happen. Now, I'm going to preface that, I'm sorry, with I've always been wrong. I'm never right. I'm 1 out of 10 times I'm right. It's kind of a fatalism thing. So take that as you will.
Well, no, and I get what you're saying, but I just don't see it. I don't see it happening. We're not going to see flying sharks. We're not going to see the steampunk dwarves. We're not going to see, gold ruined, naked dwarves. It's just not going to happen.
Good.
I just don't think it's going to happen. That's not what they're doing here. The premise that they did was, I don't know if you saw the other video that Warhammer TV put out where they were talking about, the Horus Heresy and how it's the history of Warhammer 40K. And wouldn't it be great if there was a game that was their little joke video they put out before the announcement?
Mm.
So I really think that that's what they're going to do with it. But, I still have to be honest. The thing that irritates me most about what they did with AOS, knowing now that they're going to bring back Age of Sigmar, was squatting the Bretonnians to the Tomb Kings.
Sure.
Because they're going to have to be brought back to do the old world right.
Right. And what that did to the people who were the collectors, who felt their armies were gone, there are people who got rid of their armies, not by torch, but, by sales. I just sold my High Elf army all on round bases because I didn't feel like I was going to play AOS anymore. Right. I think it's time to move on. If I hadn't thought it was time to move on, I'd be pretty upset right now. And I can only imagine how the guy who just bought my $1,500 worth of models feels.
Yeah, totally. Well, I read a comment earlier that just cracked me up. It's a pro AOS guy. So he's talking all, hey, I love AOS. It's kind of crazy how they're bringing this back. And then he made this comment about, this is probably just like Coke Classic. And I don't think he realizes what he actually just said.
No,
because
he
when New Coke came out, it was so disliked that they brought back Classic Coke for a while, and it sold so well because it was the original formula that New Coke went away.
Right.
So as an analogy, that was a really poor one on his part.
Yeah, or maybe prophetic. I don't know why they would switch back. They'd keep them both going for a while. Let's take what do you call it in 40K, the new Marines, right?
Yeah, the Primaris.
The Primaris. It has always been my opinion that the Primaris were created so that the new scale and stats of Marines would be established while being something different, so that the old armies were still valid and people wouldn't rage. And then slowly over a few years, those would be replaced, and someday we're going to see Marines, regular Marines, without any of the Primaris fluff attached to them, with 2 wounds at 38 millimeters tall. I believe that's what's happening, and I believe that's what's going to happen with AOS. They're going to fade back out of AOS. They are going, just like Hastings said 5 years ago, they're going to go back to the old world because they realize, it wasn't as much as we wanted. It's not going where we need it to. We'll go for a little while. And I really want to emphasize, in my personal belief, where I've been wrong plenty of times before, anybody who plays AOS and is desperately loving their game and didn't like Warhammer, I think your game's going away, and I wouldn't trust Games Workshop to keep it around. Not at all.
Interesting. I don't think AOS is going anywhere, personally. But that's why I had you on. That way it wasn't just me, just opining things. I like having an opposing opinion on a topic like this.
Right.
Where we can discuss these things. I don't think it's going anywhere, but I do think the Games Workshop saw the value in the old world. Like, they released those video games, Warhammer and the Old World.
Right.
They've been hugely popular.
Right. And Blood Bowl.
Yeah. Right. Which is still in the old world.
Yeah, they
didn't move Blood Bowl into AOS.
No, yeah, Blood Bowl is still old world, and the video games are old world, and the role playing game system that's in paper is still in the old world. And honestly, there's a lot of people that love the old world, and I think there's a lot of people at GW who love the old world. Let's see.
Oh well, who could? I mean, a lot of those guys have been working there forever. It had to have been hard to reset the setting. Right. Even on people like Jervis, who had these projects. He played in the old world forever.
Now, okay, here's a question that I was brainstorming today with a friend, Trevor. Why not use movement trays? Why not make movement trays with round holes in them so that you have your AOS troops, and then they could be put into movement trays and you can use them for the old world, right? And the answer, I think, is obvious, because AOS is going away eventually.
Yeah, I still don't see that.
I know you don't. I know.
I see what you're saying though, because you can just rank them up.
Right.
Heck, I have a modification for large games that I play of Lord of the Rings, and they're all on round bases. We just put them in movement trays.
Right.
Those round bases still fit in a rectangular movement tray.
Yeah.
You know?
I guess. Yeah. I mean,
completely
you know what?
do that.
Yeah, we don't know. What I'd love to see is in a few years what it all ends up being, because I made a lot of assumptions when AOS was coming out that didn't come true. I made some assertions that did come true, like armies going away, and I'm still curious about this Primaris thing. We're only 1 year into 40k 8th edition, right? 2018
or 2017. Is it
two? It's two. But I think we're getting there. We're gonna get there, and I want to see if I'm right.
I'm telling you, within another 5 years, there will not be regular Space Marines on sale.
Right. Well, I'm saying that in 5 years there won't be Primaris Marines. There will be regular Space Marines, Primaris size with stats. That's my call. Yeah, that's my.
So they'll just take Primaris out of it, and everything will be Space Marine.
Right. Yeah, they'll stop being. Yeah, they're no longer Primaris. They'll stop being Primaris, and they'll just be the Space Marines, because they're going to start using their gene seed, and then all Space Marines will be like that. And then even though we're at this like temporal static 999 of the 41st millennium, this 1 year where all this stuff is happening.
Right.
5 years from now, on that same year, there won't be Primaris Marines anymore. They already write that the fluff where Primaris Marines have been around for a few hundred years, actually.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So, but back to this. Who knows what's going to happen? Now, I have a huge Empire army that are based coded and put together, and they're nice old figures. I love them. They're on rounds. And I'm going to put them on squares, but I'm hesitant. 3 years is a long time. What if they just knock our socks off with new Holy Roman Empire Renaissance style models? So I'm trepidatious about going forward with this army if it's going to change, and that's another thing that I have to think about when I get over the rage and then thinking that GW is lying.
Right.
Where am I going to go?
Right. No. I agree. I've been so disillusioned with AOS, and it's not that I hate the system. It's just, my dwarves don't play like dwarves anymore. Mm-hmm. In official play, most of the units are gone.
Right.
I've been debating for a while and back on squares, and that's gonna happen because then it opens me up to so many fantasy game systems.
Right.
While I wait for this new system, heck, we can play 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 4th edition, 6th edition, whatever. Right. We get them back on squares. So there's nobody stopping us from doing that.
Right.
So my dwarves are just going to go back on squares.
Now here's the thing.
Yes.
I just want to interject. Go ahead and put your dwarves on the squares. What if in 3 years they're like, surprise, dwarves go on 25 millimeter squares now, not 20s?
I'll just adjust my movement trays properly.
Okay.
They're going to move movement trays. Who gives a crap? I'll just have trays with little runners in between the models to make up the space.
There you go.
Yeah. I can adapt that one easily enough. I see what you're saying. But yeah, I'm just to that. I still wonder why they're announcing this so far out. Because in the article on the Warhammer community site, it says 2 years, if not 3.
Right.
Like they did with the Sisters of Battle, it's just way too early trying to build hype. So by the time that the release happens, you're going to be burnt out on it. You're just going to be over it. I mean, the Sisters of Battle are getting models now, and I'm just over it.
Right.
Whoopity-doo, Sisters got models. That's how I feel now. It's just been too long. I'm over it before it began.
Right. What armies are going to go from AOS and are going to be in the Old World? And my initial thought is Sylvaneth, right? That's actually I wonder if they wouldn't say, hey, that's actually kind of a neat army, a lot of neat models to take to the Old World, because who knows what's hiding in that forest?
Maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, because they can write all new background for some old world stuff that was like hiding in the woods. I can get that. Yeah, maybe.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
being as they're talking about being the historical equivalent to the Horse Heresy, I just don't see them adding the AOS stuff.
Okay.
I just don't see it. I could be completely wrong, and you could be right. Stranger things have happened.
I want you to be right on this one.
Yeah. I'm all about keeping a level head. I used to be the old, grumpy man who used to knee pop. I just don't see the knee-jerk reaction. I just don't see the need for it. I
Right.
really don't. Now, if this was Games Workshop of 10 years ago, I'd
Mhm.
probably be where you are.
Right.
But Games Workshop's not quite the same company that they used to be. They've taken a real turn,
Okay.
and I trust them to do this right. Now,
Hmm.
I'm hoping they can bring back a version of Warhammer Fantasy that's a bit streamlined, so you can get games done in a shorter span of time instead of making a rather large-sized game take all afternoon. I mean, it's just my hope they add a little bit of streamlining just to speed the game up some.
Right. Yeah, maybe. That actually is another question. How will the rules be different from 8th edition? And of course, some bloat and kind of the same issues that was going on with 7th edition 40K should be solved. But do you think there will be a little bit of 40K / AOS change? Things like no longer dealing with strength versus toughness, just here's what you need to wound. Are they going to simplify it like that?
It's my hope, since they've announced this so early out and they're going to take their time doing it, that they use their heads enough to decrease the bloat that had come into 8th edition fantasy. Kill that magic phase that took forever. And, it was, wizard versus wizard, time during a game turn. Streamline the turns, a little bit, maybe make close combat more brutal or movement faster. I mean, there are lots of things they can do to streamline it, and that's what I would like to see. Especially with them having so much time to do this project. I mean, that bloat was so bad that's why I wasn't playing Warhammer Fantasy. That's why I look so forward to AOS releasing with a fresh start on the game system.
Right.
they got a lot of work to do, so I can see 2-3 years.
Yeah.
If they're really just now looking at doing it as a historical, side game.
Do you think, given that they're going to kind of, at least nominally for now, slapping this like 30K historical version of their main game, right? I'm doing bunny ears here.
Right.
Do you think they're then going to give it a light treatment and have it be sporadic and not really supported? Or do you think, I think we're going to see how hard they hit early on when it starts to release. If we see a lot of content come out, maybe entire armies of re-releases of old models, that's fine. If we see a lot of stuff come out real fast, I think that it's big. And I think that if they're going to keep it condensed to, at first, books having to do with your old models, but not supply those models, I think that they're just going to half-ass it. And I don't believe that. I don't believe they're going to half-ass it. I believe that they're going backward to this world because they know it's going to be profitable and they know that people miss it.
Right. And, I wonder what the Ninth Age guys are thinking about this.
Because this could certainly affect their people that want to play their game. Because if they can go back to playing in the Warhammer world that they loved in the first place, it might really hurt their support. And God bless them for doing what they've done. But, this could really put a crimp in their game plan.
Mm-hmm. It might not provide the crunch they're looking for, though. It might
true.
Actually be an AOS style simplified. They may have taken a page out of Mantic's book with King of War. What is it called?
Yeah, Kings of War. Yeah,
Kings of War.
Kings of War.
Yeah, they want faster games and they want to keep that rank and flank, right? I think part of what I miss about Warhammer was that crunch, but I guess really my problem is, will I ever trust Games Workshop the same as I've trusted them in the past? Because I feel that there's this flip flop and there's this, capriciousness. Like, what do I know is going to happen in 6 years? And another thing we've talked about in the past is the nostalgia. Am I running on nostalgia? Am I going to play the new game and not like it, and then realize, you know what? I just need a time machine, go back in the 90s and play games there forever. So
play more games back then. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And that's where I feel like I'm being the beardy guy who's really negative. And this podcast episode for me is event, because I feel like, okay, we're going to believe you, and then you went back on it, and then you went back on it so hard, you're going to go back to what I want. And that's the worst part. It's not even like it's going further from what I want. It's like, oh, we're going to give you back what you... I feel like this is like this crazy relationship I'm in, and everything was wrong, and I broke up, and then I got called on the phone by this relationship and said, everything will be better again. I want you to take me back, And I'm shy of it. I don't want to be hurt again.
Well, I don't blame you. I get it. The funny thing is, I've been fiending to play some old fantasy since I started this podcast, and I got to where I was talking about all those early editions of Warhammer. I immediately regretted the fact that my dwarves are based on round bases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
I'm like, dude, if my dwarves are still on squares, I could bust out a couple of my old armies and we could play some Warhammer Fantasy.
Yep.
And so those dwarves are definitely going back on squares. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Right. But this show is about nostalgia. That's the roots. That's my roots in the show.
Right.
So it's hard for me not to be nostalgic. Just hope that they hold enough of that nostalgia when they bring this game out, but they streamline it just enough to make it a bit easier to play.
Right.
Or maybe a little faster to play. Not even easier to play. A little faster to play.
Right.
That would be nice.
Right. Provide those army cards like their other two games now have.
Right.
But keep the rules like they were in the, 4th through whatever edition.
Right. I still, a lot of people give me crap for this. I still think 6th edition is one of my favorite editions of fantasy. It really is.
Yeah.
I had so much fun playing fantasy in 6th edition.
Yeah.
I mean, part of that was we were both working at Games Workshop during 6th edition.
Right.
But I had so much fun playing Warhammer Fantasy. We had the Storm of Chaos, and Chaos got the Hell Cannon, and all these cool things. Which, by the way, I still have 4 Hell Cannons.
Great.
Yeah, isn't that great? I only have one build, but I have 4 Hell Cannons.
Nice.
Well, because you could. And that 60% discount was pretty...
Right, that definitely helps. Are they metal?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. They're big, beefy metal dudes.
Right.
But, it's hard not to get wrapped up in nostalgia. Was Warhammer always sunshine and lollipops? Oh, heck no, it wasn't.
Right.
But it's the world. It's that relatable world.
That's right.
That I'm interested to see where they go. I'm curious to see how they pull this off. I just hope they speed up gameplay just enough to, make a decent-sized game, playable in the evening.
Right.
It does. I like playing big games. Don't get me wrong, but I don't necessarily want to play all afternoon and not know who won.
That's right.
And I miss my dwarves. I miss my dwarves being dwarves. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna have to. See, now here I am, totally back on Warhammer Fantasy.
That's right.
But this announcement just so out of the blue. I thought, and I looked at the date when I saw the picture, but I thought they were trolling us when they showed that square page yesterday.
Exactly, me too. And then our friend Josh, of course, trolled us harder and said, "Oh, it's something for Armageddon or something."
Right.
For Apocalypse, rather. Something for Apocalypse. I said, no. I said, please, GW, don't fail me. I want this to be a reveal that you're going to bring back the old world, because I've got a lot to say to you if that's the case. Right. GW does not disappoint.
No, they didn't disappoint. It was bringing back the old world. How insane is that? I mean, really, just think about this. How insane is that?
Yeah.
I've calmed down some since this morning. But, my initial reaction was, what the F?
Yeah.
I was like, huh? You got to be crapping me. There's no way.
Yep. I knew it was possible. I just didn't think it would happen.
Yeah, by this point, I thought Hastings' rumor was just a rumor at that.
Right. Or else AOS was just, doing what it wanted to do, doing what they had meant it to do, making money, and there was no reason to change.
Right. But then again, all those video games are doing great. So if they can make some more profit by selling models for Warhammer Fantasy on top of it, maybe they'll make it a specialist game and give it to Forge World. So there won't be as much, initially. You know what I mean? They'll still be plastics, they will still get kits, but it won't necessarily be a mainstream game, but it'll be there for us to play.
Right.
I don't think it could be a core game, because the Horus Heresy isn't a core game.
Unless it's the gentle slide into AOS going away, and I feel for AOS players. I feel for those guys if that's how they feel. If they think that what happened to us is gonna happen to them, I feel for those guys, because I believe that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I still don't. So awesome. I don't feel for you guys. I think you guys are safe.
All right.
I really do think they're safe. I don't think that's what's happening. I will be shocked if you're right on this one.
Okay, all right.
It'll blow me out of my socks.
We might not know the answer to that for 10 years then.
This is true.
So I'm going to put together my Empire army with all square bases, which is awesome because I have several hundred square bases. And you put together your dwarves, and we'll go back to playing an old edition, and then in 3 years I'll see you on the battlefield.
Oh, you're on. I'll get them all rebased, and we'll play some games. Then we'll just meet up in the old world when it happens. That said, again, I don't see the old game taking over AOS. I don't see AOS going anywhere. What I see them doing is tapping into a profit stream from all those people that left Games Workshop games, fantasy games, and have moved on to other games like Kings of War or Ninth Age. What I see it doing is drawing some of those players back, which is a win-win for everyone, Games Workshop and us as players of Warhammer Fantasy. So I just think this is a good thing, and we'll go forward from here. But I don't think Age of Sigmar is going anywhere, Chris, at all.
Mm-hmm.
It could be just something as simple as that. Playing in the Warhammer world may bring back players that are playing other games because they want that rank and flake feel, and don't have it. Because if you look at historical games, there's plenty of way you can do rank and flank without having to be tedious about it.
Right.
Look how Warhammer Fantasy evolved in the movement phase. Moving blocks of troops got more intricate over time. It became very fiddly and
more niggly, this and that, and they can make it really simple. So I have high hopes that I hope that they're doing this, and I hope that they're going to look at all the editions since third and figure out what worked best in each one, and then give us the ultimate version of Warhammer Fantasy in the old world.
Right.
That's what I'm honestly hoping for. Not holding my breath, because anything could happen. This could be a total crap show.
Right. And you know what? Who do you think is going to write it? Whose name? Not that GW likes putting the artists' names on anything anymore, but who do you think is going to write it? Is it going to be Jervis Johnson? Because he's done, he's carried the torch and written newer editions that were co-penned by him and Rick Priestley. Or do you think it's going to be someone from outside that's been doing other work that's going to come back, like Alessio Cavatore?
I don't know. I don't know if they're going to bring somebody back or if they're just going to do it in-house with Jervis and Phil Kelly and the guys, that are there now.
My vote is for James Hewitt to have some part in it because he's my favorite game designer. He did Blitzball, and while he's not with Games Workshop currently, that would be a good hire. I want that gentleman to be part of every game I play from now on.
There you go. So, any closing thoughts, Chris? Fire him out.
Yeah. Closing thoughts is, it's really, really easy to be negative and have a knee-jerk reaction when something first drops. I did the same thing with Age of Sigmar, and I had some good friends who poo-pooed it and said, stop being a drama queen. And I feel like I'm a little bit vindicated now, but, at the same time, I don't want people's games to go away. I hope you're right. I hope that AOS sticks around and that Jody has something to play forever and ever. I want Rank and Flank to come back, and I want it to be in the old world, and I want it to be a Games Workshop product, but I want Games Workshop to do it in an up-and-up way that isn't the next big, the next big lie that's going to disappoint a bunch of people and invalidate a bunch of people's purchases.
But bottom line is, Chris, you're a drama queen. It's okay. We still love you.
Totally.
But, I want to see Warhammer Fantasy back. And it's odd because I didn't think at the opening of AOS you'd hear me say that again.
Right.
It's weird. I was such a flag waver for AOS.
Yep.
And it's not that I don't enjoy the game system. It's that I enjoyed playing the game system in the old world.
Right.
It's kind of weird, huh? Because that's not what AOS was meant to be.
It did one good thing, the change, and that was it rekindled in us what we wanted to play, and since the game we wanted to play was no longer a living game, it rekindled this understanding that, we can play old editions, and you can go back and play old games and relive those days and kind of break free of that, you got to play the current. So, yeah, that's one great thing.
Yeah, I mean, because you and I will be testing out, I think, a bunch of the old editions.
Yeah, what do you want to start with?
I don't know. Let's start easy. Let's start with 6, because I know I have every book for 6.
Sure thing.
I'm sure I have every one of them sitting on the bookcase in my room.
Yep.
So let's start a game of 6, then we'll go from there. And, we'll chronicle it on the podcast.
Awesome.
Because,
Sounds great.
one thing I've always loved Warhammer Fantasy. Outside of, because growing up in it, I mean, outside of Lord of the Rings, because, Lord of the Rings is a thing of its own.
Right.
Outside of Lord of the Rings, Warhammer Fantasy is the second fantasy world that I would want to adventure in.
That's right.
I recognize the races, the tropes, the old world. Yeah, I recognize all these things. And I want a game in that world again.
Great.
So, yeah, we're just going to do this. But there you have it, guys. Games Workshop is apparently bringing back Warhammer Fantasy. And, time will tell what that turns out to be. But, this has been my hot take with Chris, here for a little balancing out my sunshine and lollipops, which it certainly wasn't that. But it's nice to have that, somebody to, talk about and get the conversation flowing. So, okay, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up there. I'll see you in a few weeks, and take care until then. And don't forget, if you want to interact with me directly, at Twitter, it's days_adventure. If you want to email me, it's dohighadventurepodcast@gmail.com. And I have a Facebook page as well. Just put in Days of High Adventure Podcast in the search and it will come up. I'm also, for ease of viewing, uploading the podcast to YouTube as well. Just search Days of High Adventure and you should find it. So now we'll see you in a few weeks. Until then, may your miniatures be painted your game's epic, and your dice roll hot.